Chances are, we all know or have known someone who has struggled with drug addiction. In the midst of that struggle, those close to the person wish that they could go back in time to intervene at a point before things got out of control. I often tell our students that I wish they weren't at Rock Solid. What I mean by that is that I wish their lives would have gone differently, that they wouldn't have ended up at a point where an intervention like this was necessary. I wish that I could go back in time to help set them on a different course. In my experience as a teacher for the last 14 years, I can tell you that there are many things we can do in the lives of young people to help prevent them from becoming addicted to drugs. I also want to share with you some of the common warning signs of addiction, as early interventions are key in minimizing the potentially devastating impacts that drugs can have. Healthy relationships are the key to both preventing addictions to substances as well as helping an addict in recovery. Attachment is a key factor, as those that we're attached to help us orient ourselves in the world. It is crucial for young people to have healthy attachments to mature, responsible adults. In my experience, quality time is the biggest factor in building and maintaining a relationship with a young person. When parents bring their son to Rock Solid, I tell them that the most significant thing they can do during the course of the year is to simply come visit. In general, the more parents visit, the better their son's recovery goes. Another extremely helpful factor in preventing addiction is something we call asset building. I would encourage you to look into the Search Institute's 40 developmental assets. Studies have consistently shown that the more of these assets young people possess, the less likely they are to engage in high-risk behaviors. Things like support, empowerment, boundaries and expectations, and constructive use of time are examples of external assets, while commitment to learning, positive values, and positive identity are examples of internal assets. The young people with the most assets are least likely to have problems with alcohol use, violence, illicit drug use, and sexual activity. However, none of this can guarantee that a person won't struggle with substance abuse issues. One thing a strong relationship will do, though, is help you recognize the early signs of addictions, giving you the opportunity to intervene before things get totally out of control. So let's say you're driving down the road and there's a hazard or a dangerous situation ahead. When would you like to know about it? Obviously, the answer is as soon as possible. The sooner the better. When it comes to addictions, there are many early warning signs worth knowing about. These things don't become unmanageable overnight, so there's opportunities along the way to keep the train on the tracks, rather than having to deal with one that's already derailed. I'll say it again, relationship is vital. Having a solid baseline for a person's behavior makes you able to recognize when things begin to deviate from this baseline. So teachers are often the ones who first recognize problem behaviors. Changes in attendance, work ethic, and slipping grades are some of the first signs a young person is dabbling with drugs. Teachers also get to see and assess peer groups every day. Drug use usually coincides with a young person hanging out with a different group of peers. Some other common signs to look for are changes in eating habits, extreme weight loss, becoming withdrawn and secretive, frequent and severe mood swings, and becoming uninterested in activities that used to be enjoyable. Another significant factor that we've seen is a sudden change in sleeping habits. Lastly, sudden changes in spending habits, dishonesty when it comes to conversations about money, or if they have begun stealing money. These are all telltale signs of drug addiction. Here's a pattern that I've often witnessed during my time working in the public school system. Say you have a student in grade 8 or 9. He is involved and engaged in school, both in his classes and extracurricular activities. He begins missing the odd class, but nothing too serious. But it's definitely a change in his behavior. Homework would be affected next, either incomplete or poorly done. As a result of these things, the student's grades would begin to decline. At about the same time, I would start to ask some questions and make some observations about his social life. Without fail, I would find that he's hanging out with a different group of friends and has started smoking marijuana. If something couldn't happen to intervene in the situation and make a change, you could bet money that by the start of the next school year, he would have quit every team, club, or activity he had previously been involved in. He'll likely still attend class most of the time, but as the number of skipped classes climbs, his grades will continue to plummet. By the end of the year, even if he can scrape together enough percentage points to pass the classes he's in, the only thing he's really interested in is getting high with his friends. Chronic marijuana users, especially adolescents, rarely limit themselves to only that drug. This is where I would see the train come completely off the tracks. As much as teachers and school counselors would try to work with the student and his family to deal with the issues, once hard drugs were a part of the equation, the student would quickly disappear from being around the school system altogether. Unfortunately, the justice system was usually the next stop on the journey, and even sadder is that, at times, the next stop was actually the morgue. Obviously, certain types of drugs and situations are more risky than others. How risky are these drugs actually? And how concerned should you be if you suspect your kid is going down that road? And what can you do about it? Well, first, all illicit drug use is harmful. This is especially true of adolescents, whose brains are still developing and maturing. We certainly see these effects in many of our students, most significantly in the ones who used harder drugs, but even in the ones who never went further than marijuana use. Their ability to think clearly, comprehend information, and remember the things they read or are taught, this improves drastically during their time in our program. The prevalence of opioid overdoses in our country is certainly evidence of how dangerous these types of drugs are. Fentanyl, and its even more deadly cousin, carfentanil, are among the most dangerous drugs currently out there, and less dangerous drugs are often cut with these to enhance their effects. So believe it or not, you can't trust a drug dealer to be honest about what exactly is in the drugs they're selling. All this to say, recreational drug use is dangerous at best and deadly at worst. It is important to understand that the drugs are a secondary problem that have underlying roots that need to be addressed. Lack of identity, insecurity, and broken relationships are three main areas at the root of addiction, and identifying the root is key to long-term change. Seeking professional help for you and your kid is an important step. Even if he won't go see an addictions counselor, it is still valuable for you to go. These professionals will be able to guide you to further resources and help you assess the level of intervention that may be necessary in your particular situation. I can say with certainty that strong relationships allow parents to identify the early warning signs of drug use, but also gave them the influence in their child's life to change the path they were heading down. I would encourage you to, starting today, be intentional about spending quality time with your children and building those relationships. Knowing what's going on in their lives will give you the best chance of knowing if something is off, and also put you in a good position to communicate your concerns openly and honestly. For more information about these warning signs, or how to help a young person struggling with drug addiction, feel free to visit our website at rocksolidrefuge.com.